on the fence line where the wild winds run, where the skies stretch wide and kiss the sun. The sagebrush whispers, the rivers hum. This land's a story just begun. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. Boots hit gravel and the prairie sings with every hoofbeat. The frontier rings from ranchers' hands to miners' veins. The spirit of the West remains. Wyoming calls where the heart beats free. Mountains rise and dreams run deep. Past the borders, past the sign, there's a world alive beyond the fence line. So come ride with me through the dust and time. Find the soul of Wyoming beyond the fence line, beyond the fence line. Beyond the fence line, beyond the fence
Hey, good morning. Happy Thursday, February 5th, Wyoming. Hope you guys are doing well. Had a great morning so far. Did a little workout. Was listening to President Trump speak at the National Prayer Breakfast. So encourage you to take a look at that afterwards. But anyways, today, what are we doing today? We're going to talk about Wyoming agriculture. We're going to talk about where I stand on agriculture. We're going to talk about some fun facts. We're going to start out the show today. Actually, before I get into the topic of the show, I'm going to talk about the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture. Just a fuzz later in the show, but I wanted to kind of just start out the show with some fun Wyoming agriculture facts. Also, what's going on, like just some big news in Wyoming agriculture in the last year. Just a few quick highlights, and then I'm going to get into the topic of the show. What is the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture, or what do I think the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture is? So with that, let's take a look. So did you know? We all know this actually. Wyoming has more cows than people, right? Right. And there are more guns in Wyoming than cows and people combined. That's kind of a fun fact, right, you guys? So Wyoming is we're a fun, unique state. A lot of people from the outside looking in, when they look at Wyoming, they think of, the West, they think of agriculture, they think of wide open spaces and big ranches and farms. When they think of Wyoming, that's what we're thought of. Did you know that Wyoming, we're the number one producer of wool in America, and the number four producer of sheep and lamb chops? Well, and lambs, right? Sheep and lambs. I like lamb chops. I'm sure you do too. And of course, we have, extensive hay and barley and pinto beans and sweet beets, wheat crops as well. And of course, a lot of that has had some challenges the past couple of years with some drought and stuff like that. So just kind of some fun Wyoming agriculture facts. But let's talk about a few just kind of top level news items in the last year, some important things that are going on in Wyoming agriculture. And then I am going to spill the beans on what is the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture. So obviously one of the really, really, really big things going on right now and it's related to Wyoming agriculture and water, is the Colorado River Compact from 1922. Those operating rules actually expire this year. And so obviously a lot has changed since 1922 when it comes to this water agreement. Well, you might say, well, Joseph, the Colorado River isn't in Wyoming. You're correct. You're absolutely correct. But some of the headwaters for the Colorado River coming out of the Green River Basin are part of the Colorado River Headwaters organization. And so that's a really big pact. Water sharing all the way down the Colorado River, all the way down Arizona, Nevada, California, and the lower basin states. So this is going to be negotiated this year. This has got to have a conversation. And like I said, obviously a lot has changed since 1922, especially population. Population in Colorado and Arizona, California, and the use of that water going up. So, and of course, we know that things are low. So that's going to be interesting to watch that conversation going on with the this year, because it's got to happen, and if the states can't figure it out, then I believe the U.S. government will have to step in and do something. What else is going on? Did you know? So last year, the Cowboy State Agricultural Initiative was launched by Governor Mark Gordon. I think this matters. This is a strategic statewide effort to kind of bring agriculture leaders, educators, legislators, stakeholders together to support the industry and its viability moving forward. But one thing I did not know, and I'll just admit, I don't know everything, right? I actually kind of thought that agriculture was a much bigger industry in Wyoming than it actually is. And and guys, again, I sit here, I don't pretend to have all the facts about everything all the time, right? But agriculture actually is only about 2%. 2.5% of our overall GDP in this state. And it does contribute about $2.5 billion a year to our economy, roughly, but still ends up being only about 2.5% of our economy. And so I thought that was for some reason, that wasn't a fact. I thought I sort of had this perception or idea that it was a lot more than that. But actually, believe it or not, you probably do believe this, the largest contributor to the GDP in this state is the government. But that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, still a contributor to our culture and to our economy here in Wyoming. And so, yeah, we've got this this agricultural initiative that has been launched last year, which I think it's a great idea to see how we can invest in our agricultural sustainability and innovation across the state. So I think it's really, really important. I think the other thing that's kind of big on the news too when it comes to AG and agriculture here in Wyoming is that we are having water issues. Uh, Drought has been intensifying, and obviously this year, you guys, wow, we have had, at least here in the Cheyenne area, and I know you guys have had more moisture as you get further west. Here in the Cheyenne area, I mean, it's been bone dry all winter. I mean, we haven't got hardly a drop of anything out here, and this is going to be concerning for our agricultural producers in the state if we don't start getting some moisture here pretty soon. So let's pray for rain, you guys. Pray for rain. Because I think that that's going to be really, really important. And the other big thing that happened in agriculture, and then I'm going to get into this: what is the number one Wyoming threat to Wyoming agriculture? I'm going to get into this in just a minute. But I think one more item of note, and this is actually from last summer, because I don't talk about agriculture a ton on the show, or haven't in the past, probably be talking about it a little bit more, is obviously the cattle market, the beef prices and stuff from last summer, and we were talking about bringing more imported beef into the nation in order to drive prices down, how that affects cattle and beef producers in Wyoming, increases in cost for our producers in Wyoming, how that affects the producer's income as well as consumer demand, and just sort of, I guess you could say it's kind of a nuanced topic in a way for policymakers because it ends up being out of a lot of people's control. And U.S. beef is still, beef prices are still pretty high. And that is, of course, creating interesting market conditions for those folks that are in the cattle industry. With that, I'm going to fire up a whiteboard here, and we're going to talk about the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture. And by the way, yes, I am going to be drawing on a whiteboard, a digital whiteboard here today. And you're probably not going to elect me for my artistic capabilities. That would be my wife. She is very, very artistic in nature. I am more like a stick figures kind of a guy, but I'm going to be sharing with you what I believe is the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture. And so with that, we're gonna draw a little graph here and have some fun with it today on the show. Something we really haven't done before. So we'll see how this goes. We'll see how long this takes. I haven't really timed to doing this. I've got what I'm going to draw in my head, and so we'll see what happens here. And I'm going to be talking about how bringing government money and subsidies. So really, look, I'm going to let the cat out of the bag right up front here. I'm going to draw a graph and kind of show you how subsidies are destroying, and they are the biggest threat to Wyoming agriculture. And I'm going to talk about some facts in the industry. And of course, if, you can agree, disagree, whatever, if you want to in the comments. But I'm going to actually show you guys just with some drawing here on what's happening to agriculture in America. This isn't unique, by the way, just to Wyoming. This is going on across the country, and we need to be paying attention. We really need to be paying attention to what's going on because and the real question will be at the end of this show today is what are we too far down this rabbit hole that we may not be able to reverse the course of action. And you guys, I'm going to be honest. Like, I know, Joseph, you're running for governor. You should have answers for everything. I don't have answers for everything. I don't know if we can reverse this trend. I hope we can, but I don't know if we can. I hope we can. So I'm going to put in some inputs here on what we have on agriculture. I'm going to do this real quick. So we're going to put some inputs. So I'm going to probably use a cattle ranch. Probably use a livestock scenario here for this. So I'm just going to throw some inputs in here. We'll say feed. We'll say we'll say health. We'll say land. We'll say, and by the way, these are just inputs, into the cost of running a ranch or a farm and how it's affected by this money coming in. And I'll just say, let's just say transport. We'll say transport. We'll say we'll say, processing, etc. Okay, so I'm just going to call these like sort of the inputs. Well, these are the inputs, right, that we've got, or the different costs. And of course, there are other things. I'm not, this is not meant to be exhaustive, but what we're going to do here is we're going to talk about how this is getting affected by government subsidies. Because the bottom line is government subsidies are to me are absolutely the biggest threat to Wyoming agriculture, and really not just Wyoming agriculture, but so much of what we've got going on today is affected by this is affected by this issue, by this topic. Oh, look, those lines are going crooked with me. Well, see, here we go. We're learning together. We're learning together. We're gonna put these lines back real quick. Um, and how these inputs are affected by government subsidies. So I'm going to go ahead and put this up here. So there we go. So we're going to talk about government subsidies today, and why this is the biggest threat to Wyoming agriculture. And quite frankly, it's the biggest threat to so many industries that are important to Wyoming, important to the U.S. And so here's what happens when we put money into any industry. Oh, you know what? And we're going to call this, we'll call this medium and large. We'll call this medium and large operations, medium and large agricultural operations here. And I'm going to go ahead and copy and paste this down below as well. Copy paste this down below so we could show you guys this down here as well. Oops. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So what we've got here is we have this input of all of this money, right? And we bring all this money into an industry, and this doesn't just apply to agriculture. It applies to everything. You would be surprised you would be surprised if you Google just about anything that we consume and you look at what we subsidize as taxpayers. It's astronomical. Whether it's the gas and oil industry or agriculture or any industry, just look it up. Just Google it, and you'll see how we, the taxpayers, pay for so much of this stuff. But what does this do to a medium to large operation when this money is available to these operations? Well, here's what happens. So what happens is all of these folks here, so these folks here that provide feed, health, land, transport, processing, et cetera, right? They know this money exists. So what this does is this drives up these costs. Okay. So this drives all of these costs up because they know this money exists. So what happens is agriculture becomes more expensive, right? Because what happens is this money's coming in. We know the money's available. So we start driving cost up because the money is available. In addition to this, what also happens is all of these also end up, guys, and again, you're not gonna let me governor for my drawing skills here, but you'll get the point. So what happens too is all of these folks also get to a point where they might tap into these subsidies as well in different ways, shapes, and forms. Okay, so we bring this money in. We're going to spend this money. Oh, you know what? I'm missing actually kind of an important one here. I should probably put labor in here. Labor is kind of important, huh, guys? I'm going to throw labor in there. Of course, soon we might have some of Elon Musk's, robots to do this, right? So, maybe labor costs will go down. Of course, people will lose their jobs, but we might have robots doing some of this labor. Wouldn't that be crazy, guys, right? So we've got this money coming in, and now it's available. And what it does is it innately drives the cost of things up, the operation up, because the money's available. It's a bottom line fact. And then what happens is the cost of these operations continue to go up, and they too might bring in the subsidies. They might bring in the subsidies, and what will that do to these inputs? That'll cause these inputs to go up even further, right? So we subsidize it additionally on the other end, and then we continue to bring this up, right, you guys? Now, 80% of all subsidies go to large operations. They go to large farm, ranch, or operations corporations, things like this that produce our food. Now, we all like food. We all are hungry. We all need food. So understand that obviously we need this. But what government subsidies does is it radically changes the market. In fact, what I probably should do is actually point this way, where this goes into these lines as well. So what happens is we bring these subsidies in, and it keeps raising the cost of our inputs, our feed, our health, our labor, our land, our transport, because we know the money exists. It's coming in. We might as well spend it, right? So then what happens? What happens on the output when we have this money coming in? So, or the to market, right? We go to market. We have more latitude and control on where this output price goes. So you know what? Yeah, we might be able to raise our prices a little bit. We might do that. But because we have this money coming in, we might keep prices the same. Or because we have this money coming in, we might even lower prices. But we have flexibility on the to market and the output because it's being subsidized by tax dollars. So while we're driving the cost up here, we have flexibility on the output. Now let's go down here to the bottom and let's look at small. We'll call this small to medium operations. By the way, small and medium operations are getting only about 20% of these subsidies, if they're getting anything at all. So 80% of this is going up here, at least 80%. Sometimes I don't even know if I could trust the numbers coming out of the government anymore. So just bear with me. So we've got this right here, right? So we've got government subsidies coming in here, but at a much lower rate. In fact, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to X this out. I'm going to just say most of these producers don't get this government subsidies, right? So they're not getting near the dollars, near the help. In fact, I'm just going to do that. All right. So then what happens to all these folks down here on the bottom? Let me copy them. I'm going to delete all this down here. So what happens to all these folks down here? We're going to bring this down. What happens to all these folks down here is their costs go up, right? Their costs exponentially go up. So you've got all of these folks participating in the marketplace, and their costs are going up. And they're getting very little of this money. But guess what? All these folks might still be getting that money as well. So all these folks along this line might be still getting that. So their costs are going up significantly. But then, so what happens to them when they're going to go to market? So their costs are going up because of this on the top. These massive government subsidies going into these medium, large operations. They have that output flexibility because of the money coming in. What happens to these folks? Let me tell you what happens to these folks. Well, the only way that they make money or profitable, they put food on their table, is they have to do this to their pricing, right? In order for them to output to market, this is what they have to do. If they do that, what happens to their they're not going to make it, right? They're not going to survive. They're forced to work in this output down here. So they're forced to do this, or maybe even in cases forced to do this, where they have to compete in the marketplace that is unfairly subsidized by these dollars coming in. It's increasing their costs and then controlling. They have lost control of their output, whereas they can control their output pricing to market. They have lost control of their market. So what ends up happening with these folks is they have a negative net zero return. Now, I don't know if you guys know this or not, but the last many years or bunch of years, America has lost over 200,000. We've lost over 200,000 farm and ranch operations. This should concern all of us that are concerned about agriculture. Okay, because we've lost these, and you what you hear, the word on the street that you hear is, well, this is because no one wants to do the work anymore. This is because the families don't want to inherit the land. They don't want to do this anymore, and so these are being sold off to larger producers, or they're being sold to developers or whatnot. But I want to ask you this question: who wants to wake up every day, dawn to dusk, work their tail off for a negative zero return or a loss? Who wants to do that? Nobody does. I don't want to wake up every morning and know, okay, I'm going to work all day and I'm not going to make ends meet. I can't pay my bills. I'm not going to do that. I wouldn't want to do that. So when you look at the reality, this is my belief. My belief is that this is the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture, to agriculture and industry in general, is this money coming in that's changing the marketplace. That's, in a way, I guess we hear it a lot, right? Picking winners and losers. Because when you put this kind of money in, taxpayer dollars, which by the way don't exist. I mean, we're almost $40 trillion in debt. And these folks up top can control their output prices because of this. And these folks on the bottom, their costs continue to increase. But for them to be profitable, their pricing's got to be up here. Their pricing's got to be up here in order for them to make money because of all of this coming in. I'm really interested in what you guys think about this. But when you look at this from just an objective and just a perspective of just truth, if in order for us to fix this or adjust this, we've got to remove this. The real question, and I pose this to you guys, and I humbly say, I don't necessarily have an answer to this. I humbly say, I'm open to thoughts. Are we too far down this road where we've created a market that is no longer free? We no longer have a free market. It's gone. Free market. We don't have a free market. We just don't. Are we too far down this road to where we would not know how to operate, or the market could not adjust in order to get this out and actually drive costs down? Because you know what happens when you get rid of this? When you get rid of these subsidies, the free market decides what happens with the cost on these things. The free market decides what the output price is. Because guess what? The output price will be what people can afford. Okay? And if you get rid of this money, the costs will eventually go down, but there's a pain period, obviously, right in between that. And we have to ask ourselves, can we do it? And obviously, if let's say we did this in Wyoming, let's say that we cut off all the government subsidies in Wyoming. Say Wyoming is no longer going to take government subsidies. Okay? We're going to go back to true free market principles and do that. Well, good for us. But my question would be this. Oh, and I see you guys can't actually see that because of my video, so I'm going to move this over here. Net zero return. I'm going to put this here. If we did this in Wyoming, unfortunately, our AG producers in this state would have a disadvantage nationwide, right? Because unless we cut this off nationwide and let the free market adjust, and don't get me wrong, it probably will be painful for a minute. But on the other side, what you have is a free marketplace that drives itself. And guess what? This is how you lower consumer pricing. This is how you lower the cost of things, by getting this out of the picture. So there you go, guys. I mean, that's we've been at it for about half an hour. on Wyoming agriculture, this is what we need to do if we want to free the market, if you will. And this principle doesn't just apply to agriculture. It applies to health. It applies to, well, just about everything in our lives, guys. We've got to take this out. It definitely applies to solar and wind and all that stuff, right? That we're subsidizing. You get rid of subsidies, you get rid of those projects because they can't survive without taxpayer dollars. So there you go, guys. I hope you enjoyed this. I would love your comments below. If you guys have any thoughts, comments, things you'd like to add to this graph, I'm open to that. I'd love to hear your ideas. So yes, we have problems with water in Wyoming. Yes, we have challenges even in cases sometimes with disease. And of course, we've got that Colorado River Compact coming up. And yes, you know what? We've got some great initiatives going on in Wyoming, and even the recent one that the governor started, which is good news. I think the Cowboy State Agricultural Initiative is a great idea. But this is my take on what I believe is the number one threat to Wyoming agriculture. And even though it is a relatively small part of our GDP, a small part of our state's overall GDP, it's still a very, very important part of our culture, of putting food on our tables. We all like food. But we're not going to fix it if we keep putting in dollars, government subsidies. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you guys enjoyed this show. For those of you that care about this particular item in Wyoming, I'm doing my best to try to talk about every issue that Wyomingites care about throughout the next couple of weeks. And of course, the next couple of weeks, we're going to start covering the legislative session a whole bunch too. In fact, that is probably starting next week. In fact, especially on Tuesdays and Thursdays, I'll probably be covering the budget session and legislative bills for you guys. So that'll be fun. So what's coming up on the show as we wrap it up today? Well, tomorrow's show, you're going to meet the family. I hope you guys enjoy that and that you guys are here for that. It's going to be a real fun time for you to meet my wife and kids, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Next week, obviously on Monday, Monday, we're going to be going into the legislative session, right? I will actually be there probably all day, but I will definitely do the show or run the show at 7:30 like usual. I am going to go to the 7:00 prayer thing at the Capitol as we spend some time in prayer for life. So I will be there at that, and then we'll do the show as well. So with that, I hope you guys have a great rest of the week. It's already Thursday, February 5th. God bless you guys. Put your comments below. Share if you have a comment. I look forward to hearing from you guys soon. Take care. And until next time, have fun out there. I'm going to wrap the show up today with a song. Let's do Wyoming Wind. I think that's a fun one. Take care.
That welcome sign on I-25, paint ship still standing proud. Ranch hands lean on rusty gates, reading weather in the clouds. Antelope on the edges, cold dust on our jeans. Oryx blanking on the rim like a string of prairie dreams. Wyoming wind, you shove those semis sideways on the line. Make a 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till they're stacked up tight on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a branding fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin, but I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Red dirt stuck in busted boots, pickup rattling down 14. Feedlot steam in the dim sunrise, snow geese cutting clean. L-tracks in the timber, sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump, the gust cuts through the soul. You put Push our trash clear to Nebraska. Strip a billboard to the nails. Slam a screen door off its hinges. Shake the grain out of the rails. You whistle through those cold cars. Howl across the powder rim. Every fence line, every windburn grin. Got carved by you again. Wyoming wind. You shove those semis sideways on the line. Make it 20-foot wall of white in a single night. Drag those tumbleweeds till there's change of tide on the old barbed wire. Carry smoke from a burning fire. You steal my hat, you sting my skin. But I was raised by that Wyoming wind. Red dirt stuck in busted boots. Pick up right around 14. Feet light steam in the dim sunrise. Snow geese couldn't clean. Elk tracks in the Tama. Sagebrush oceans roll. We pull our hoods tight at the pump. The gust cuts through